And we're going to leave you now because
Just
we
wanted
have
to
Commissioner
provide
Department of
a
Corrections
very
talking to us
quick
with an
briefing
update.
in terms of the status. Since we've last talked, the situation has remained for the most part stable. The rapid response teams that are out there are still addressing small groups of people that have largely splintered from the large group. These have in many cases have gone into more of the residential neighborhood areas, and then tend to come back onto the main thoroughfare. So though that's really what's where the focus has been. There has not been large numbers of or large issues in terms of property damage or those sorts of things, which we feel is fortunate. But we also, do not want to be overly confident. While we feel like we have the resources adequate and necessary to address the situation that's occurring, we know that there are people still out and about, whose intent is not very community focused, and we want to make sure that we're there and ready to respond. The crews will remain out, those teams will remain out, continuing to pursue those who remain out in violation of the curfew, and continue to engage with these teams. And we know that this is really part of the objective of some of these folks is to draw that attention, but ample resources are out there to both address those small groups that remain, and continue to maintain a focus on response to emergencies that may occur. We are still working on finalizing the arrest numbers. The booking process is slower than it might normally be, but we will have arrest numbers, full arrest numbers here overnight, and get those out to people as quickly as we can. And we have, other than that, there's really no substantive or serious injuries reported of any personnel involved in the incident, nor people who officers have engaged. And I think that's, I'll leave it at that for now, and I answer any questions that people may have.
In terms of the status of situations around the Capitol, I understand that there's a very massive force around the Capitol building. Why is that?
The Capitol and there are, as I said earlier, multiple places throughout the Twin Cities that have been identified as critical and core infrastructure. And based upon that, resources are allocated to those locations as a preventative measure, and really out of an abundance of caution. And we do think that is the center of government for our state. As a result, that is deemed and regarded as a critical infrastructure, as are a number of facilities throughout the Twin Cities in both St. Paul and Minneapolis, and there are resources allocated to those critical infrastructure locations across the Twin Cities.
Commissioner, I know you don't want to get a false sense of security, but given how quiet it's been tonight and how successful you've been at quelling any disturbances, is there going to still be a need to fully activate the National Guard, or is it too soon to say, hey, we're doing pretty good, we think the worst is over?
I think the governor's commitment to this was, we're in this until this is addressed. And we do not feel that we are out of this yet. There are these people that remain in our communities. We are also seeing, not just in Minneapolis and St. Paul, we're seeing these types of issues occur across the nation. And I think it is critical for us to remain diligent, and I know that's the governor's commitment. So we believe that it's necessary for us to be diligent until we are confident that regular, normal police operations can meet the public safety needs of the community.
Any idea when you'll have an idea on arrests? What time tomorrow?
as early as possible, overnight, as they're processing these arrests. Some of this is more of a paper process, so it takes longer. We'll have those, and we can get that information
Do you
out.
even have a rough, is it dozens, is it a handful?
Dozens, I would say, for sure. I don't know the exact number, and there was dozens as of about 10, and I have not been able to get good numbers since then. Arrests are continuing to happen as they encounter and address some of these smaller groups that remain out there that have been still causing problems or coming back into these the core areas around the 5th Precinct and so forth. There has been continuing arrests.
I just wanted to clarify your answer to one of Tom's questions. You're saying that you want to maintain the status quo in terms of law enforcement. Is that just for tonight, or are we talking tomorrow night and the next night?
I think right now the key issue is we will definitely be talking with the governor, throughout the course of tonight and into tomorrow morning. The governor will have to decide if it's a situation where he's going to continue the order or a curfew for an additional night. But ultimately, what we want to make sure is that the people in Minneapolis and the core cities and really across Minnesota feel safe and comfortable. And that's really what this operation was about from the beginning, was to restore order. And unless that we're in that position, I think, there's a strong commitment. And we will be requesting the governor to continue that until that there is confidence of that. Now, do I think we've made progress tonight? Yes. Do I think that we will have a better sense as we get into this tomorrow? Yes. Do I think this is a long-term proposition in terms of the need for this level of personnel? No. But ultimately, the goal is to restore the situation to the point where regular, normal police operations can meet the public safety needs of the cities.
Roughly how many people are you talking about at this point in some of these small groups that are still roaming? And have there been any arrests or missions targeting where they're going back to? There were some rumors about, hotels. Have there been hotels or houses outside the cities where people are congregating?
So there has, we have. I can't say that there's been specific operations. There certainly intelligence is being, looked at in terms of where people are going, and we will be addressing that. And again, this is one of the places where I think Minnesotans have been, exceptional partners in terms of wanting to restore the order of the community, and we've certainly received information and continue to, and that's really what happens when the community feels a level of confidence. You start to see those types of reports come forward, and I think that information is coming in. And so, law enforcement across the Twin Cities and really across our state will be looking to address those issues as need be throughout tonight and through tomorrow and so forth.
And how many people are you talking about? What's the estimate for how many folks are still out there roaming?
So, some of these groups are running, they can be anywhere from 5 to 20. Oftentimes you may find groups of 5 to 10, and then they reconnect, and then the teams are responding to address that. They may arrest 1 or 2, and then ultimately they split up again and recongregate. And we think that that's going to be some of the tactics throughout the night. We also believe that that there is always that chance that some of the people who do this potentially more professionally, may draw a line where they want to engage in a different sort of way. And I would just say that, as a force, as a group who is intent upon restoring order, we want, and a commitment was made to accomplish the objectives of preserving life, protecting property, and restoring the order in the city. And we're committed to that, and we'll continue that until we're confident that we're there.
That said, are you starting to scale back, moving people back into, a reserve position here, sending some people home yet?
We have not at this point. Colonel Langer and Commissioner Harrington will be making make those assessments on an ongoing basis, but we have not. Again, we're in this for the long haul. We're in this until normal police operations can be resumed, and we'll be having the commanders will be having conversations with the governor through the night in terms of what tomorrow looks like relative to the order, but that's where we sit today.
And there's some more gatherings, I don't know whether to call them protests or demonstrations or whatever it is planned for the next couple of days. Do you expect that there will be very large responses again, to preventive responses like we've seen today, or will they be commensurate with what you think is going to appear in Minneapolis?
Well, I think the responses will be commensurate, as we see other protest activities happen. But ultimately, I think, again, we go back to this whole notion of the objective first and foremost. When people are peacefully protesting in accordance with the law and outside of the curfew period, it is the objective of government. Our role to make sure that we're protecting people's absolute right to engage in those activities. And that commitment continues, but lawlessness and failure to comply with these orders to allow us to get order in the city and across our state, it has to be addressed in a meaningful way, and I think that's been demonstrated tonight, and the commitment remains.
Can you talk about the split, the decision to really split access between Minneapolis and St. Paul, not just at the interstates and bridges, but even on the roads and really travel between the two cities at all tonight?
Well, I think largely, certainly the freeways, the access stuff was really intended to be a means of kind of, I think, further advancing the curfews, number one. Number two, to prevent issues from popping up in terms of the easiest way to travel between the two cities. But obviously, we did see groups that did try and leave Minneapolis and head into St. Paul, and it was the objective of Chief Axtell and St. Paul Police Department, along with the Joint Command that is operating the operation in Minneapolis, to keep that from happening. And so I think that's where you saw some of those limitations. The orders are in effect, and so as a result, that was the objective and remains until, again, there is a level of confidence that our communities are safe.
Can you describe that conflict at the bridge?
I don't know all of the details. We was here for a portion of that. A line was established. There was attempts to breach that line. That line was held, and in a positive sort of way. So I think that's really all the details I know. I don't know if there were arrests that were generated as a result of that or not.
Can you give us estimates for how many law enforcement / National Guard you had out on the street versus protesters last night, and how many law enforcement / National Guard versus protesters you had on the street tonight?
Well, I think in both instances, I think as the governor and General Jensen and Commissioner Harrington talked about earlier yesterday morning now, there was a substantial number. It was among the largest that has ever been seen in our state. At tonight's level of personnel that were activated and either were engaged in specific activities, protective activities at critical infrastructure or in Minneapolis, were wide scale, unprecedented. The exact numbers, I don't want to get into a lot of the details or where, but we're talking many thousands between law enforcement and Guard members, many thousands. We feel that was necessary in order to protect infrastructure and have set a standard that Minnesota expects relative to community safety.
But And the night before, which I guess we're now, you know what I'm asking, the night before, many thousands, or just it was obviously less?
There were thousands yesterday, now a night ago, but we also had a much larger crowd. Much larger.
And that's if you can do the crowd estimates.
Yeah, so the exact numbers I can't say, but I will say that when you look at even just the sense tonight around the 5th precinct, comparing that with last night, and I think as we talked about earlier, the order, the curfew that was put in place appears to have really made a difference, and there's just no doubt about that. We had incredible levels of compliance, I would say. And even many of those protesters who may have hung around near the 5th precinct to kind of see what was going to happen through the course of the night, we believe that many of them who just wanted to check it out ultimately did go home because they saw that this was going to be a decisive and strong action, and certainly the people that we're continuing to deal with are people who are more bent on creating disorder and problems in our city.
What have you learned as you're making more arrests and doing the mission, the operations today, about who these people are? Have you identified specific groups that are most involved here? What do we know about the out-of-state, in-state at this point? Is there any developments there?
So relative to the in-state, out-of-state, I don't have any information about that. Again, we'll have a better sense of that once the booking processes are completed. What we do know through a variety of sources, many of them things that you could see in just public shared information, posters that have been put up, that there are groups out there that are engaged in these activities, but oftentimes when they are debriefed or when they're talked to subsequent to arrest, they won't identify themselves as an affiliate of X group. So it's not as though we may ever know that for sure, but ultimately we do know that people who have strong affiliations with a variety of these groups, are out and about in our community, and maybe some of the very people that we continue to pursue throughout Minneapolis.
Commissioner, to kind of sum this up in some ways, is the success of tonight beyond even what you were expecting here, given it's 1:15 in the morning? Has it gone far better than you even anticipated it would with the greater manpower?
Yes, I believe that tonight we feel it went far better, and I think really 2 reasons. One, there was clarity, absolute fundamental clarity of mission. There was an overwhelming number of resources that were brought to bear, which obviously was critical. And the third, and really I think critical, there was a tremendous level of community support for the curfew. As hard as that is to do in an open and civil society, there was incredible compliance with that, and I think that's a true testament to Minnesotans, to the people in those neighborhoods in particular that have been affected by this disorder and this lawlessness. I think a lot of credit is due them for their willingness to comply and place their trust in us, and I think that's one of the things that the governor and the mayors felt really strongly, that we needed to make sure that we could deliver. And I think we've set a stake in the ground, we've drawn the line, and we'll continue to do that until we feel confident that the city is safe and that normal policing operations can continue.
There was a lot of, the curfew though was in place the night before as well. The 2 differences that stand out in my mind are the remarkable unified pleas by faith leaders, community leaders in a very moving fashion, and then there were additional ones. Representative Omar had a 5:30 news conference, and then also this really dramatic shutting down of the links between the 2 cities Has that ever happened before where you shut down this much of the interstate system and the bridges to the degree to which there's a lot of people in this room who are wondering if they could even get to Minneapolis? I mean, people really, after 7 o'clock, have been stuck in places.
Right. I do think it's unprecedented. But what happened in the Twin Cities here over the last 4 days, as well, has been unprecedented. And certainly we've talked about people have talked about the fact that outrage over what happened last Monday is understandable. But what happened since then ultimately, I think, has really been something that we needed to get control of. It's, as the governor and mayors talked about yesterday, while they amassed a large force to go out and address the problem the night before, that force was overwhelmed. And tonight that was not going to happen, and as of now it has not happened, and we believe will not. And we're committed to stay in this until we're stable.
And how many more officers did you have on the streets this night versus last night?
We used some different tactics as well as an increase of officers. Exact number I don't know, but we're talking hundreds more from all over. And the ability to respond, and so it was massive. The support provided to EMS, to fire, was enhanced and increased. So it was a comprehensive approach to thinking about what today was going to look like, and we wanted to send that message clearly. I think the support of the community and elected and faith leaders made a huge difference, and I think that those people in those neighborhoods that I think want to see justice done relative to the death of Mr. Floyd, and now they want to begin to rebuild their neighborhoods and all of the businesses and infrastructure that supports those neighborhoods.
You said that the mission was different tonight, and the governor said earlier tonight's going to be different. Can you just sum up what the mission was? What were the instructions to the National Guard and to law enforcement tonight?
Look, the governor's message prior to at the beginning of the evening to all of the rapid response teams that were put together, to the the commanders who oversaw the mobile field force, delivered from the governor through Commissioner Harrington and Colonel Anger, was that, look, this has to stop. This will stop, and it stops with us tonight. We draw the line. We're in this. We need to give these neighborhoods back to the people who live there. That was the message, and I expect you to do that humanely, but aggressively, because we need this to stop. And I think that was demonstrated tonight. And we look to seeing this continue, and ultimately having those neighborhoods back in the hands of their police department and, more importantly, those community members.
Should Minnesotans rest a little easier tonight?
Pardon me?
Should Minnesotans rest a little easier tonight?
Yeah, I think they should arrest a little easier tonight. I think we feel like we're in a good place. We are not out of the woods, as I've said. We believe that there is the potential for things to pop up, but we have resources out there that can respond to those and get on those things quickly. We will keep these forces in place up until the governor decides, based upon the input from Commissioner Harrington, from Minneapolis and St. Paul officials, and Colonel Anger. The governor will make decisions about when to begin to step this back.
Right, Commissioner, I've got to get you, right, one more.
Arson, as we saw, or fires were such a big issue last night or 2 nights ago. What are you seeing in terms of fires tonight, and what's helped most on that front?
Fire activity was lighter tonight. We did have a fire early on out on 35W, a vehicle. It was abandoned and on fire. That ended up, there were some small activities with some potentially Molotov cocktail types of things that were thrown, but we did not see any kind of large-scale fires. But we absolutely had plans for how we would respond to those to make sure that we got the right resources to those calls as needed as quickly as possible. And the same with EMS. We wanted to make sure that when people called, that there was somebody coming to help.
And Commissioner, I got to get you back to headquarters, so we're going to wrap there. So thank you.
Thank you.
Have you're going to come back?
And that there, of course, Commissioner of the Department of Corrections, Paul Schnell, telling us that a situation does remain stable from the last time that he talked to us, which is about 3 hours ago. He says that they're still addressing some small groups that have splintered off and they've gone into residential areas. He says he doesn't want to be overly confident. He says that we're in a good place, but we're not out of the woods yet.
He was kind of evasive about how many National Guard troops were here, and maybe he didn't realize that the National Guard was sharing some other information, but they tweeted out that they have 4,100 right now and are quickly moving towards 10,800 to support the Twin Cities. So, quite a few.
Yeah.